Ladies and gentlemen of Algebra 2, this is Mr. Heron. We're talking about Unit 4, Video 5. We're talking about solving quadratic equations by factoring. So solving is the big key here. Now we're trying to actually figure out solutions, or figure out zeros as they're often called with quadratics. And that is what we're going to do, but we're going to do it without graphing. We're going to do it strictly through factoring. But just to take a look, you're looking at y-intercept, vertex, axis, symmetry. Let's solve this by graphing. So y-intercept is going to be -3. Vertex, that's that negative b over 2 times a. So that'll be -2 over 2 times 1. So that's a 1. So there's my axis of symmetry. So my axis of symmetry will be right down here. Y-intercept is 3, so I mirror that on the other side. So then to figure out my vertex, I put 1 back in for x. So that'll be 1 squared minus 2 times 1 minus 3. Okay, that's what I'm looking for. So that's going to be 1 minus 2 minus 3. So that would be -4. So now when I graph this, so 1 minus 2 minus 3 is -4. So 1, -4. So there's my, so when I go to my zeros and graph this, it does not look right to me. Oh, you know why? I messed up on a part. This should not be, my y-intercept should be down here, not up there. So let me erase some of this. Let me fix that. I apologize. So that's going to be right there. 1, -4. There. So when I graph this, it's going to go like so. So my answer is actually going to be at -1 and +3. So because that's where it crosses the x-axis. And if you can play around with your calculator a little bit, you can graph it and actually check for you where that is. So solving by factoring basically means you're using the zero product property. Zero product property just says this. If two things multiply to get 0, then either part is equal to 0. So if I got two things that equal 0, then either the first part equals 0 or the second part equals 0. So if I look, solving by factoring, I want to figure out how to set it equal to 0. So here I'll subtract 6x over. So I'll be x squared minus 6x equals 0. Factor, which in this case means pull out the GCF, so that's going to be x and x minus 6. And look, this is technically two things set equal to 0. So that means x equals 0 or x minus 6 equals 0. So x equals 6. So my solutions are going to be x equals 0, x equals 6. So here, for number 2, I want to subtract 5x and subtract 14. So it'll be x squared minus 5x minus 14 equals 0. So then I want to factor this. So what multiplies? So what multiplies to -14, but give me -5 for an answer. So I'm looking around. I think -7, +2. So -7 times 2 will give me -14. -7 plus 2 will give me -5. So that's what I want to work with there. So that's going to be x minus 7, x plus 2. Equals 0. So I set each part equal to 0. So x equals 7, x equals -2. There's my answer. Bam. That's what I'm doing. So now, same kind of idea here. Solve equal, set it equal to 0. Bam, boom, done. Good. Let's move on. What multiplies to 64, but will give me -16 for an answer? I'm hoping that, you see, well, 64 is 8 and 8, but 8 and 8 is +16. But what if I go -8, -8? So that'll be x squared minus, let me rewrite that. I can skip and go x minus 8, x minus 8. So set each part equal to 0, which is the same thing. X equals 8. So what that means on a graph is where x equals 8, 7, 8, out here, that my graph is just going to touch the line. It's not going to cross the line. So that's all it's going to do. For number 4. So if I subtract 9x, I'll get 3x squared minus 9x equals 0. So if I pull out 3x, I'm left with x minus 3 equals 0. So now I've got two things. So I say, you know what? 3x equals 0. X minus 3 equals 0. So x equals 0. X equals 3. There's my answer. Okay? So factor, pull out what's in common. Sometimes you got to factor a trinomial. Other way is going to work. So now if I throw in a little wrinkle here, so subtract 1, add x. Subtract 1, add x. 6x squared plus x minus 1. So now here's where I got to get a little fancy. What multiplies to negative 6, but it's going to give me a positive 1 for an answer? Well, I'm hoping 3 and negative 2 jump out at you. So this is where you've got to rewrite this using 3 and negative 2. So I'm going to rewrite this as 6x squared plus 3x minus 2x minus 1. So parenthesis, 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 parenthesis. So I'm going to go 3x, 2x plus 1. Here I'm going to pull out a negative 1, 2x plus 1. So I'm going to have 3x minus 1, 2x plus 1 equals 0. So to finish it off, set each part equal to 0. Then solve. So here x will be 1/3. Here x will be negative 1/2. There's my answer. And I'm done. All right, so this is just putting together what we've been doing the past couple days and just taking it one step further. So here, this is kind of like saying x squared plus 0x minus 25 equals 0. Well, what multiplies to negative 25 but adds up to 0? Well, I'm hoping you think 5 and negative 5. So I'll go x plus 5, x minus 5 equals 0. So set each part equal to 0. So x is going to equal negative 5 or x is going to equal 5. Boom, there's your answer. So now working backwards, what happens if they give you where they cross and you've got to come up with a quadratic equation? So negative 5, 7. So if I just take a quick sketch of the graph. So this is negative 5, this is positive 7. This is where my roots are, okay? This is where my zeros are. So the simplest thing I could do would be think about a graph that would look like that. And so when I do that, I think, well, x would equal negative 5 and x would equal 7. So if I back those up and make them equal to 0, well, that'd be add 5, subtract 7 to both sides. So that'd be x plus 5 equals 0. X minus 7 equals 0. So then to put that, I would put it together and say, you know what, that would be x plus 5 times x minus 7. Then I would say, you know, if you draw your box, if that's your thing, you know, go x5, you know, or, whoa, I had to back up. I did that one way wrong. So you go x5, x negative 7, if that's your thing. Me, I just think factoring is, or foiling is easiest, so that would be x squared minus 7x plus 5x minus 35. So simplified, you're going to be x squared minus 7x minus 35 equals 0. There's my simplest function that would do that. So that would be a quadratic equation that would give me negative 5 and 7 for answer. So if I do this, so same kind of idea. So x equals negative 1/3, x equals 4. I don't want to deal with the 1/3. I want to deal with something way easier. So what I'm going to do is get rid of the fraction. So that will cancel out. So 3x equals negative 1. Then I'm going to add 1. So 3x plus 1 equals 0. Then on this side, I'm just going to subtract 4. So x minus 4 equals 0. So I got this one and this one that I want to multiply together. So draw your box, do the FOIL, whatever. 3x plus times x is going to be 3x squared. That's going to be negative 12x plus x minus 4. 3x squared minus 11x minus 4. That's going to be my function set equal to 0. That's going to be my equation. So taking a look here, I need to look at the graph and figure out what my roots are. Well, that's at 0. That's at positive 4. So that's where my roots are. So I want to use 0 and 4 to kind of figure it out. So x equals 0, x equals 4. So that's like x minus 4 equals 0. So then I'm going to have x times x minus 4. So I'm going to have x squared minus 4x. That's going to be my function. All right, anytime it's just equals 0, it's just x. So if I take the height of a parallelogram is 4 millimeters more than its base, so that's going to be, if I go b, this will be b plus 4. And that's going to be equal to 221. Find the base and height. I can do that because I know what I'm doing with algebra. So b times b plus 4 equals 221. So that's b squared plus 4b equals 221. So bring that over. So now here's where I got to do a little factoring. I got to do a little thinking. What multiplies a negative 221, but it's going to give me a positive 4. So I got to start playing around a little bit. You know, 221 divided by some different things. 7. So, and just playing around, in about 2 minutes, I figured out that if I take 17, negative 13, those factors will work. So I'm going to have b plus 17, b minus 13 equals 0, equals 0. So b is going to equal negative 17, or b is going to equal 13. But wait, Mr. Heron, I've got two answers. Well, which one of them makes sense in the context of the problem? We're talking about a base and a height. If we're talking about a base and a height, are you going to tell me a negative number makes sense? Well, I don't think so. So I think 13 makes a heck of a lot more sense. So I'm going to go with 13 for an answer, which means that the height is going to be 17. All right, so bear in mind what you're dealing with, especially in the context of the problem. So if I look at an area is going of a triangle is 3 millimeters less than its base. The height is 3 millimeters less than the base. So if I go 3 millimeters less. So if I go base, this is going to be b minus 3, and that's going to be 44. So this is going to be b times b minus 3 divided by 2 equals 44. All right, and right now this looks like a mess. I know you guys don't like fractions, so my first step is going to be get rid of the fraction, multiply both sides by 2. That's going to be b times b minus 3 equals 88. So that's b squared minus 3b equals 88. So then if I subtract 88 over, so now I got to start playing around. What are factors of 88? What multiplies a negative 8? That'll give me negative 3. Well, I'm looking at 11 and positive 8, and that's just kind of where my mind jumped. So I'm going to go b minus 11 and b plus 8 equals 0. So b minus 11 equals 0, b plus 8 equals 0. So b is going to equal 11. B here is going to be negative 8. So again, 11 is going to be my answer. So when I go look at the problem, my answer is going to be 11 with a height of 8. All right, play around with this a little bit. Come talk to me with questions, and we'll talk to you soon.